You say there are different dimensions. I just wondering why you call them different dimensions. What's the definition of a dimension?
Well, because I talk about our belonging to all of natural history, our belonging to the cosmos, our belonging to human history. These are the different dimensions. Our belonging to human history that stretches back, but it's also human history of our own family, and our belonging to a global economy. All of these are different aspects of what only occurs as a whole in our own being. That is to say, we're dependent on all of these dimensions.
I'm still not sure why you're saying they're a dimension and not just an aspect.
Because
they're aspects, and I
right.
appreciate that. Why dimension?
Because I look at them along different planes. That's why I say dimensions. In other words, as I talk, we can use the term aspect. I'm not sure if there's anything substantively.
Yeah, dimension in mathematics has a very specific.
Okay, I'm talking about a dimension more philosophically. And by their aspect or dimension would probably work equally well. But what one does is focus on and go along and move along that and try to explicate that. For example, if we talk about ourselves as beings in society, we need to separate that from a number of other features in order to talk about it. We need to spend time on it and focus on it, and there are people who spend their whole lives working on that one dimension. See, I can't help using the word dimension. It comes to spontaneous. Yes. Yes.
You know, I wonder what you think is worth fighting about or arguing about around this. So, say, just putting you said that the U.S. doesn't have a social democratic tradition. I know you know that's not true. It is a strong tradition, just weak, and in terms of beaten down and defeated. But if you think of that tradition that you're part of, and say Cornel West or Michael Harrington, who probably wouldn't play up the critique of religion in the same way, sort of Cornel.
Well, but I will say, Cornel West says, as a Christian, I applaud my brother Ronald Aronson.
So what's the ground?
For his powerful defense of a courageous and compassionate secular worldview. He is a religiously musical atheist I admire.
So what is the, what is the, within that realm of people who agree on those things but don't agree on religion?
Okay,
how should we deal with that?
Yeah, good. Good. That's for me a crucial point, something I've been working on in the past couple of months. Along the line of believers and secularists, we need to talk. And there are a number of reasons why we need to talk. We need to talk in the American context, very specifically. We need to talk because there is a fundamentalist enemy that's trying to shove religion, a specific kind of religion, down both our throats, particularly creationist religion. But secondly, we need to talk in order to find common ground, in order to see where we agree and where we disagree. I would not write off anyone who is religious. I would want to discuss with them what we agree on, specifically about a scientific and a rational and a historical and a social worldview. Where do we agree on those aspects? But also, where do we agree on social issues? I think it's really crucial to do that rather than to simply say, they're impossible, as they say we're impossible. And this comes back to the question of how we define ourselves. I define myself as a non-believer, and I'll use, depending on the discussion, I'll use any of the terms at any point, because they're all relevant, they all apply, and they're all correct in a certain respect. But I'm also aware, and I suppose this is especially true, in the chapter I wrote, which read the Choosing to Know chapter, I talk about choosing to know. If someone is a fundamentalist who denies evolution. That is part of it's not simply that the person's stupid. There are, by the way, atheist writers, I forget the name of this one person, who wrote an article published last June in Britain that he thought that believers were somehow genetically damaged compared with non-believers. I mean, it's, you know. My view is rather different, that some people choose to believe in God, some people choose not to. And it's very important to understand why people make that choice. I'm, after all, a Sartrean in that respect, very much so. In the French, I was the editor of Sartre's book, translated into English, called Truth and Existence, which is the one place where he talks about what it means to know and to accept truth. He has no theory of knowledge outside of that book. The French word ignorer, can mean I don't know, or I look away, I choose to not know. And in English, we sort of preserve it, you're ignorant, but put ignorant next to I ignore, meaning I don't know. And it's the active verb, I ignore. Why does 40% of the United States ignore evolution, choose to not know it? That's a very significant question. And that's something, there's a choice there, and people only make choices for reasons and under pressures and given tools and skills that they have. So all of those lead me to say about anybody, we need to talk. I need to respect you're making a choice for your reasons. Now let's talk about what they are. That doesn't preclude arguing. It doesn't preclude arguing. It does preclude arrogance. I'm smarter than you. You're stupid. Is that a good note to...
I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you again.